I had to make a video about this so that people could understand because there seems to be, constant um, back and forths where people don't get each other about why black people in America see things from a turn from the lens of blackness. And it's a misunderstanding between black people in America and black people from other places. And it's a misunderstanding between black people in America and immigrants. And it's a misunderstanding of black people in America by white people in America, which to me is funny, you know. Um, and there's a misunderstanding of black people in America generally by um, the media. And one of these things, what the reason why this happened because of the way America has been towards black people in America, and this has created an identity where black people don't really associate with America. And why and the reason why I say this is different because if you travel overseas as a Canadian, whether you're white or black, you see yourself as a Canadian. If you travel as a Mexican and you're a native Mexican, like a ethnic, like a Native American Mayan or whatever, you you understand that you're Mayan, but you don't go overseas seeing yourself as a Mayan. You see yourself as a Mexican. You go and represent the Mexican, your Mexican, your Mexican nationality. If you go overseas as a British person, whether you're an Indian British, whether you're Kenyan British, whether you're Nigerian British, whether you're whatever, you understand that even though you have other origins, you are British. That is your nationality. And then when you go overseas and you know represent yourself, you have to represent the British nationality. Uh, so on and so forth in many different countries. Just about every country is like this. But see, black people in America, it's different. And this is because America has never really embraced black people for the longest. America embraced black people in the fourth quarter. And so this has created a weird situation where black people are like outsiders in a country that is always claiming to be accepting of everyone, which is what gives black people a easy uh, perspective on America in a way that white people can't do. When you're black, you can just understand, boom, oh, this like they doing this again. They're at it again, Like there's the America that America wants to push, the politicians and all that, all this like powerful, moving with stealth and uh, the greatest nation and all that. But then there's the America that black people know. The America, the hidden America, the whitewashed America, the America where people get screwed over, in different ways through housing, and people get redlined, and people get, uh, you know, unfair treatment in healthcare, and people get railroaded in in wars. You know, minorities get sent to wars in an unequal pattern, or overrepresented in wars. Uh, just you see the other side of America, the side of America that's kind of swept away. So this puts you at odds with the vision of America that is being put out there. And when you constantly talk about this, you become uh, un you're seen as unpatriotic because other people don't want to hear that. They're used to hearing the America that they want to hear. So it's like it's there's two Americas. There's the America that, especially like the majority of the population, white people, of course, want to believe in, and then there's the America that black people know well, where there's a lot of discrimination and America not giving, denying them access to the things that they need to succeed in the right way. And then America blaming them for not succeeding. So you have that going on. And this is what leads to black people just, even going overseas and just seeing themselves as just black. And this has become a state of confusion, especially when we're online talking about issues. And this is why there's a lot of ethnic tension between different groups, especially different groups of black people, because different groups of people, like everyone else, doesn't see things that way. Just discrimination in other places, but it's not this long. It doesn't have. It doesn't. You don't have. Like if you're black, you can go into the 1700s and talk about discrimination in America from the 1700s. If you're, if you can go to the 1800s, you can go into many different periods of America and just pull out discrimination. In many other countries, you can't do it like that. You can't just continuously pull out different examples of someone being discriminated, or a massacre happening to a group of people, just constantly being mistreated and not given their fair due, or being screwed over after a war. It's like you don't have like constant examples of black soldiers or soldiers, ethnic soldiers coming home from fighting for what should be their own country, right? Imagine if you're fighting for your own country and you come back home and people are trying to lynch you. How does that happen, right? And then it's just not talked about, and then years go by, and then you bring it up, and then people get uncomfortable, and then now it's considered you're woke now talking about these types of things, and you should just shut up and just you know be proud to be in America. That's what's being pushed now. We're back to these types of talking points instead of understanding, acknowledging how America has always separated black people from this country, and the black communities had to live uh, outside or define itself by its own terms, right? And so, it's just America has to figure itself out. This either you want to keep going down this path, ignoring the black experience in America, and uh, being honest, or you just gonna be continue to be just lie and try to sweep things under the rug and ignore the different experiences and pretend America is just a good old piece of apple pie. Just keep going forward, just doing that, and just call everybody woke to cover everything up. What do you want to do? That's where we're at with it. And then, of course, there's the telling black people to be grateful for being able to integrate and be the situation that you know we're in. It's like, no, you promised, after slavery things were going to get better. You had the Reconstruction era, and that was screwed up by Klan members and all these hate groups that did not want to see that happen. So all of that got screwed over. That's not what's talk. People just talk about slavery. After slavery, things were supposed to be better and reconstructed. You had the Reconstruction era. Things were supposed to be put back in order. Black people were supposed to get positions and things like that, but you had racial laws put in place to make sure that didn't happen. And so black people got segregated, and racial theories were created to keep black people from certain institutions. And this went on for a century after slavery, damn near. So now it goes from, you went from the middle of the 1800s to the middle of the 1900s. We're in the middle of the 20th century. World War II has happened. All these world wars have happened. And black people are still not able to participate in certain institutions. So imagine that. Imagine all the black people that could have been in institutions and things like that that didn't get to do that. They had to take some menial job, some stereotypical job, and work that for their whole lives. Imagine all the black people that lived in fear and had to cower down and couldn't be, as bold as they wanted to be during these time periods. Imagine all the black people that could have participated in the America that everyone talks about during this time period that couldn't do that. Right? So you have all that. You have to think about all that because there was a lot of black people that had to learn how to do great things, but they had to really watch out and be careful. I have some of them. I talk about some of them on my channel. I talk about the Potato King. I talk about there's another guy who built a school in Mississippi and it became something that's still has grown to something much bigger and greater today. There's so many different gems of black people that had to do things through even like under the fear of discrimination and the fear of white mobs going after them for building their own separate institutions, right? So black people had to do this despite being under the constant threat and fear of Jim Crow. You have to create your own identity, pretty much separate from mainstream America, and so then now you're told, hey, boom, we're equal now. There's no more discrimination. All the bigoted white people, they just disappeared. You don't know where they went. They just disappeared. All the institution, even though white people are moving their kids to the suburbs and they're taking them to private schools and stuff like that. You got now black people are being overrepresented in the prison population. Uh, and unemployment is always a problem. All these types of things are going on. You still got medical racism rampant. You got the education system is terrible. There's all types of problems in the black community, health problems, everything. But now it's all magically gone. So now everybody pretends we're in a colorblind society. And this doesn't help the conversation because now you can just sweep it under the rug, almost worse than being under actual racism. That's what it was for the last 50 years. You could just sweep everything away and say, this is no longer happening. Like, you guys are just, whining too much and, you're just making things hard, uh, harder than it needs to be because now we're in a new society. Things aren't like they were. You can get a job just like a white person. And so there's always these back and forths about, is racism still existing? And, you know, what is racism? And who is really racist? Is it black people? Is it white people? All this types of stuff going on from the 70s and 80s onwards, going into the new millennium. And, so this is the new identity that's now on black people. Now you have to figure out how to live in a quote unquote post racial society, right? Society that is saying that it's no longer racially divided. And so, as a black person, you should be able to make yourself successful. And if black people are failing, then that is on them. That is not white people's problem. Now white people are saying why should we have to feel white guilt if black people are equal and cannot make it in uh, this post-racial America? So, you have these types of conversations being taking place, and that's the America that most of us now talking are in under. And we grew up through these years, and we grew up having conversations about how slavery was to black people and how white people felt, and the bigotry of white people's parents and grandparents, and how white people don't, younger white generations don't want to be that type of way, and everyone's trying to learn how to be better. Those are conversations that we had from the like 70s onwards into the new millennium, and of course in the beginning of the 2000s and also the 2010s. Um, we didn't want to be People didn't want to be bigoted. People wanted to be better. We wanted to find ways to heal these fractures that have been caused by ignoring the marginalized black community. So now, that's going on. But then things kind of get muddied up because now you have different, you constantly have different right wing groups popping up, and you have this thing popping up, and think tank popping up, talking this type of stuff and talking about uh, bringing up statistics of what black people are doing, and using method to show how black people are criminals and things like that, to make it look as if black people aren't trying to get it together. And there are things that are true in that. There are things that black people definitely need to improve on, and a lot of these things aren't being improved on because black people are focused on the wrong things. And in the black community, the problem is everyone is seeing things that are, yeah, it's like a herd mindset for a lot of black people. You know, People only see things through the lens of being successful at being at sports. If you're not good at playing sports, or you're not good at music, then you have to go and be, like a regular person. That's like looked down upon. Like you can't be just like getting a job at Walmart or whatever. Like that's failure. You have to go out and be a rapper. You have to go out and be, you know, to play basketball or football or something like that. Now for the new generation, they want to be streamers. They want to play video games or be on Discord and all that type of stuff. Um, but this is the identity that has taken place amongst black people, especially since like the 60s. Now people identify with success as sports and all these type of things, music and all of that. And it's become, and also of course the Democratic Party. And people always want to look for a new black leader and don't see the understanding of we can build things at the micro level. There's a lot of people not understanding we can build things at the micro level. We don't have to constantly wait for like a big, the next Farrakhan or Malcolm X or Martin Luther King, or, Medgar Evers or whoever. We don't have to wait for these people to show up to get us to finally get it together. You don't have to wait for a big leader to pop up. You can have leaders in little small communities. You can do urban farming. These things need to be talked about. You could talk about reading, to having programs for black kids to read, and keep and create milestones, right? So these black kids can read, and you can get the literacy levels up to a point where that is acceptable. Because the literacy levels for the longest time are not acceptable at all, at all. These things need to be fixed. Unemployment levels need to be fixed. We need to have like trade jobs and things like that made accessible for the black areas, so that you don't have to have these unemployment levels. And these unemployment levels are going to lead to people doing all types of petty crimes, you know, overflowing the prison population. We got to do things in order to prohibit excessive levels of unemployment and overrepresentation of crime. We have to come up with actual plans in place instead of just talking about just the same basic conversations of, oh, black people need to vote for this person. Just black conversations have been constricted to just talking about voting, or just talking about just historic pain in general. Like, no, we need to talk about be solution oriented so that we can really solve the issues in the black community and bring uh, um, what do we bring? Bring fulfillment in the black community and have people actually see how black people can have real success and don't have to be celebrities and things like that. You don't have to look at, Jay-Z or whoever. You can look at someone in your own micro community and see things that are going on. And this was something that I thought was going to happen. I thought this would have happened under, the black owned businesses type talk. Because I remember, when I first heard about Claude Anderson a decade ago, him talking about how black businesses, just black people don't support black businesses, and black businesses aren't being given a chance, and the way the money flows out of the black community. I'm like, why are we not doing something? Why are we not doing enough about the the lack of support for black businesses? And then now, you see over the years now, people openly talk about supporting black owned businesses and all that kind of stuff. But, I still, it's still not really serious. It's like now you have so many bozos getting involved with that stuff and grifters and things like that. It's just like, you know, it's not what I thought it was going to be. And it was looking better like it back in 2014 and 15 when people, you had like, when I would be in like serious conversations with people and they were talking about the businesses and, they were really trying to get things off the ground. Later on, people like other people who just wanted to do some BS, like what's this lady, the pink sauce lady, people like that started showing up and just ratcheting things up. But before, it was like a real conversation, you know, improving the black community, and the businesses in it. And these, we have to really be serious about these conversations. I feel like the black community, everything's just trivial. Everyone's goofing around a lot, or not everybody. I'm not gonna say that. A lot of people are goofing around. Some of y'all too old to be doing that. And we really gotta, talk about people. We have to find ways to get rid of people who are not there to improve things, and we have to be serious about grifters. We have to stop, looking the other way. Someone does some con man type stuff or tries to sell some BS. You gotta get them out. We need to find ways to implement like anti-grifter stuff. We gotta find ways to only keep around people that are here to improve the community, have actual solutions. So we got a lot of agents, we got a lot of um, you know con men. We have a lot of that going on in the community, and this is because they can go online and pretend to be some guy in a suit that's talking some cool stuff and has a plan to build something that's going to help the black community, and they're not really doing nothing. They just want to sell you a bunch of stuff to sell you a bunch of stuff to sell you the next thing to sell you the next thing. It's all a scheme to get your money in their pockets so they don't have to work. And this is the next thing in the black community. But that's another thing. My whole point is how blackness in America is different from other countries, and that we have to, so that when we having these conversations, so instead of people getting disrespectful from both sides, people understand that blackness in the black community has come out of being isolated from mainstream America. So when like a black person says, "Oh, black people can't do that," and they're really talking about how historically and pretty until recently, black people didn't have the opportunity to do certain things or be a part of certain institutions, so they couldn't have certain success that other groups of people could have. And so this created a certain, black people have had a certain experience understanding this section of America. And other people who are new to America might not understand this because they don't understand how things were back then. So they're under this idea of coming into America in post-racial society. Okay, they're coming in a post-racial society. So you can't really blame either side. Like we're coming in being told, every people coming in being told, hey, this is a post-racial society. Don't come over here with your victimhood mentality. Pull your bootstraps up and get to work and get successful. So everybody wants to brag about being successful and how racism isn't real and all this type of stuff, including black people. Everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to seem like they got it together and they're making things happen. So this is the mentality that's been going on post civil rights era. And in order to, and now we have to realize that a lot of this is not exactly true. That there's a lot of things that are still lingering around and around on purpose to keep the divide going, and that there are people who are part of think tanks and right winger type groups that do not want to see minority groups, people that they want to be marginalized from ever having uh, representation in America in positions of power. They want to marginalize that. They don't want to see certain groups of people all the way up. And everybody who's not white must understand that. They don't want a bunch of Native Americans running around in the Senate, dictating policies. They don't want a bunch of, Indians from India doing that either. They don't want a bunch of Muslims running around dictating things, and because then you're gonna influence international policy. You're not gonna want to see America just going to just treat this countries with Muslim populations a certain way. You're gonna want to. You're not gonna if you're a black person who's not like a sellout. You're not gonna want to see them, America make all types of policies that's gonna screw over Caribbean countries with black populations and black African countries. You're not gonna want to see that. You're not gonna want to see black uh, communities either in America being marginalized. So this is what the powers that be know. This is why they don't want to see other groups of people climb up the American ladder. This is done on purpose. This is why you can feel the Jim Crow type energy, the bigoted energy coming back, because they don't want to see a bunch of other people climbing up and coming into power. This is why when people come to America, when you're not white, you're put under this stigma. You have to fight this stigma constantly. You're Asian, you know what you got to fight. You're Muslim or whatever. You have to fight a certain stigma. Everyone has to fight a certain stigma when they're in America, especially if your group has ways that doesn't fit in with the westernized model of how you should be. So everyone in America, your existence is you're trying to figure out how to live within this westernized model, which is really for people of European descent. So you're always trying to figure out, are you too much of an outsider? Everyone. That's why everyone's always struggling. People are feeling like, oh, am I not Muslim enough, or am I not black enough, or am I not, you know, am I not Indian enough? Am I not, Hispanic enough? It's like, no, when you get to America, your mind is gonna be warped with different types of ideologies. You're gonna feel the energy, changing. You're gonna learn how to try to get by in a different land that doesn't really understand who you are and doesn't want to understand you. And it's trying to other you and push you to the back. So you have to figure out how to coexist in this type of structure that is America. You come in just, hey, like I want to have a good life and make things work, and then you find out that this is all the underlying things that come out of America, the belly of the beast. You know, so this is the dichotomy of America. I just wanted to put that out there so people could understand, like, why this is happening, so we don't have to have all this confusion and arguments of people from different places. And that's all I got for you guys right now. I'm out.